The rain had a way of finding every crack in the roof. Each drop fell into the tin basin with a hollow sound, echoing through the one-room shack where Marisol bent over her sewing. Her fingers were raw from the needle, her eyes strained from the dim light of a single candle. Yet she walked on, stitching dresses for women who would never know her name, women who would wear her labor to banquets and dances while she counted coins to buy bread. In the corner, her daughter, Isela, slept on a straw mat. Marisa often paused to watch her, the child's face soft and untroubled, untouched by the weight of hunger or the shame of poverty. Every stitch Marisol made was for her. Every blister, every sleepless night, every sacrifice, so that Isela might grow into a life brighter than her own. Years passed, and the girl blossomed. Isela's beauty was the kind that drew eyes in the marketplace, the kind that made whispers follow her steps. Marisol, proud yet fearful, worked harder than ever, selling her health and youth to keep her daughter in clean dresses and with books for her schooling. She told herself it was worth it, that one day Isela would understand. That day never came. When Isela was 17, a carriage rode into the village, carrying a young man with polished shoes and a smile that gleamed like silver. He was the son of a wealthy merchant, and he noticed Isela at once. Promises spilled from his lips, promises of silk gowns, of a home with marble floors, of a life where hunger was only a story told by others. Isela believed him. One evening, she returned home with her eyes alight and her voice trembling with excitement. "Mother," she said, "he wishes to marry me. But he cannot know that I am the daughter of a seamstress who lives in a shack. He must believe I come from better blood." Marisol's heart clenched. "Isela," she whispered, "I have given everything so you could stand before him with pride. Do not cast me aside now." But Isela's gaze hardened. "If he learns of you, he will turn away. I cannot lose this chance. From this day forward, you are not my mother. You are no one." The words struck deeper than any hunger, any cold night Marisol had endured. She wanted to cry out, to remind her daughter of the nights she had gone without food so Isela could eat, of the hours she had bled into her work so Isela could dream. But the girl's back was already turned, her footsteps already carrying her toward the carriage waiting at the edge of the village. Marisol stood in the doorway, the rain dripping through the roof onto her shoulders. She watched until the carriage disappeared into the horizon, carrying her daughter into a world she had built with her own suffering. The shack was silent again, save for the hollow sound of water falling into the basin. Marisol returned to her sewing, her hands trembling but steadying with each stitch. She had nothing left but her work, and the memory of a child who once slept peacefully in the corner of the room. And though her heart was broken, she whispered into the silence, as if her daughter might still hear. "I was your mother. Even if you forget, I will always be." The mansion's halls gleamed with chandeliers and polished marble, a world far removed from the cracked walls of Holomia's shacks. Isela walked through them as though she had always belonged, her silks whispering against the floor, her laughter echoing in the grand rooms. Beside her, Dorio, the merchant's son, watched her with admiration, convinced he had found a jewel untouched by hardship. But secrets have a way of seeping through cracks, no matter how carefully hidden. It began with whispers among the servants. A woman had been seen lingering near the gates, her clothes worn, her hands rough with work. She asked after Isela, her eyes filled with a mother's longing. The guards turned her away, but word reached Dorio's ears. One evening, curiosity gnawed at him. Isela, he said, his tone light but edged with suspicion, a woman came to the gates today. She claimed to know you. Who is she? Isela's heart lurched. She forced a smile. A beggar, nothing more. People will say anything for coin. But Dorio's eyes narrowed. He had grown up in a world where lies were currency, and he knew the sound of one. Days later, he followed the whispers himself. At the edge of the village, he found Marisol bent over her sewing, her candle flickering against the night. Her face was lined with years of sacrifice, her hands scarred by labor. Yet when she looked up, her eyes carried the same fire as Isela's. Seamstress, Dorio said, though his voice faltered. Do you know a girl named Isela? Marisol's lips trembled. She is my daughter. The truth struck him like a blade. He returned to the mansion, his mind a storm. That night, he confronted Isela. You lied to me, he said, his voice sharp. You told me you were of good blood, that you were not touched by poverty. But I have seen her. Your mother. A woman who has given her life so you could stand here in silk. Isela's face drained of color. Dorio, please. Do you think I would not have loved you if I had known? His voice cracked, anger and hurt entwined. It is not her shame you carry, Isela. It is your own, for denying her. Tears welled in her eyes, but pride held her tongue. She turned away, unable to face the weight of his words. Dorio left her in silence, the echo of his footsteps fading into the night. The next morning, Isela stood before the mirror, her reflection draped in jewels that suddenly felt heavy, suffocating. For the first time, she saw not a woman who had risen above her past, but a daughter who had betrayed the very hands that had lifted her. And in the quiet of her chamber, she whispered a name she had tried to bury. Mother. The morning sun spilled over the village, gilding the crooked rooftops and the dirt paths with a fragile light. Dorio's carriage rolled slowly through the streets, its polished wheels out of place among the mud and stone. He ignored the stares of the villagers, his thoughts fixed on the woman he had met in the dim glow of a candle, the woman whose strength had been hidden behind her daughter's beauty. He found Marisol where he had left her, bent over her sewing table, her needle moving with quiet determination. She did not look up when the door creaked open, as though she had long grown used to being unseen. Señora Marisol, Dorio said softly. Her hands froze. She lifted her gaze, wary, her eyes searching his face. Why are you here? He stepped closer, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. Because I owe you an apology. And more than that, I owe you honor. Marisol blinked, confusion flickering across her features. Honor? From a man like you? Yes, he said firmly. I came to your home once, thinking I would uncover a shameful secret. Instead, I found the truth of sacrifice. You gave your youth, your health, your very soul so that Isela could stand in the light. And she, his voice faltered, but he pressed on. She has forgotten. But I will not. Tears welled in Marisol's eyes, though she tried to hide them. I did what any mother would do. It was never for thanks. Only for her. Dorio bowed his head, a gesture of respect she had never received from anyone of his world. Then let me thank you, even if she cannot. Without you, there would be no Isela for me to love. Without you, there would be no beauty, no grace, no laughter in my halls. You are the root of everything she is. Marisol's lips trembled. For years she had been invisible, her sacrifices swallowed by silence. To hear her words spoken aloud, not by her daughter but by the man who held her daughter's future, was a bomb she had never expected. Señora, Dorio continued, his voice gentler now, I will not force Isela to face what she is not ready to see. But know this, in my eyes, you are not a seamstress in a shack. You are the foundation of her life. And I will honor you as such. For the first time in many years, Marisol allowed herself to weep openly. Not from sorrow, but from the strange, aching relief of being seen. Dorio placed a small patch of coins on her table, not as charity, but as recognition. This is not payment, he said. It is respect. And it will not be the last. When he left, the shack seemed brighter, though the roof still leaked and the walls still leaned. Marisol returned to her sewing, but her hands no longer trembled. She stitched with a quiet strength, knowing that somewhere beyond her walls, someone carried her story with honor. And though Isela's rejection still burned in her heart, Marisol whispered into the silence once more. I was your mother. I will always be. And now, at last, someone else knows. The mansion's corridors were hushed when Isela noticed Dorio's absence. He had left without a word, and when he returned that evening, his eyes carried a weight she had never seen before. He spoke little at dinner, his gaze distant, his hands restless. Isela's heart tightened with unease. She had learned to read him, to sense when his thoughts were not his own. That night, when the servants had gone and the candles burned low, she pressed him. Where were you today? She asked, her voice sharp with suspicion. Dorio looked at her, his silence heavier than any answer. Finally, he said, I went to see her. The words struck like a blow. Isela's breath caught. Ah. Your mother, he said, his tone steady, unflinching. Marisol. Isela's face drained of color. She turned away, her hands trembling. Why would you do that? Because I needed to know the truth, Dorio replied. And I found it. I found a woman who has given everything for you, who has bled and starved so you could stand here in silk. And you, his voice cracked with anger. You cast her aside as though she were nothing. Isela's chest tightened, shame clawing at her. You don't understand, she whispered. If you knew, if anyone knew, I would lose everything. I could not let her shame follow me here. Dorio's eyes burned. Her shame. No, Isela. The shame is yours. She is the reason you are who you are. And yet you deny her, as though her love were a stain instead of the very foundation of your life. Isela's tears spilled, hot and bitter. She wanted to defend herself, to cling to the fragile world she had built, but the image of her mother's weary hands, her bent back, her quiet devotion, rose before her. For the first time, she saw not the poverty she had fled, but the love she had betrayed. Did she speak of me? Isela asked, her voice breaking. Dorio's expression softened, though his words cut deep. She spoke only of love. Even after all you've done, she whispered into the silence that she will always be your mother. Always. The weight of those words crushed her. Isela sank to the floor, her sobs echoing through the chamber. The jewels at her throat felt like chains, the silks on her body like a disguise she could no longer bear. For the first time since she had left the shack, she longed not for marble halls or chandeliers, but for the warmth of a flickering candle and the sound of rain dripping into a tin basin. Dorio, she whispered through her tears, what have I done? He did not answer. He only turned away, leaving her to face the truth she had buried for too long. And in the silence of her chamber, Isela felt the weight of her guilt settle upon her like a cloak she could never remove. The night was heavy with silence when Isela slipped from the mansion. The jewels she once wore proudly were gone, replaced by a plain cloak that hid her face. Each step toward the village felt like a descent into the past she had tried so desperately to erase. Yet now, that past called to her with a voice stronger than pride, stronger than fear. The road was long, and the memories longer. She remembered her mother's hands guiding hers as a child, teaching her to thread a needle. She remembered the taste of warm bread on nights when Marisol had gone without, pretending she wasn't hungry. She remembered the lullabies sung softly under a leaking roof, the voice that had carried her through every storm. And she remembered the moment she had turned her back on it all. By the time she reached the shack, dawn was breaking. The first light of morning spilled across the crooked roof, painting it in gold. Isela's heart pounded as she raised her hand to knock, but the door creaked open before she could. Marisol stood there, her eyes weary but alert, as though she had been awake all night. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence between them was filled with years of sacrifice, betrayal, and unspoken love. "Mother," Isela whispered, her voice breaking. Marisol's lips trembled, but she said nothing. Isela fell to her knees, clutching the hem of her mother's worn dress. "Forgive me," she cried. "I was blind. I thought I needed to hide you to be worthy of love, but I see now, I was the one unworthy. You gave me everything, and I gave you nothing but shame." Tears streamed down her face, her sobs echoing in the small room. "If you cannot forgive me, I will understand. But please, let me tell you that I am sorry. Let me tell you that I know now, you are my mother, and I am nothing without you." Marisol's hands shook as she reached down, lifting her daughter's face. Her eyes glistened with tears, but her voice was steady. "Isela, I have forgiven you every day since you left. A mother's heart does not stop loving, even when it is broken." Isela collapsed into her arms, clinging to her as though she were a child again. The years of distance, the walls of pride, the wounds of betrayal, all crumbled in that embrace. For the first time in so long, the shack was filled not with silence, but with the sound of love reborn. And as the morning sun rose higher, spilling light through the cracks in the roof, Marisol whispered into her daughter's hair. "You were lost, but you have come home. That is enough." The days that followed were quiet, yet filled with a peace Marisol had not known in years. The shack, though still humble, no longer felt empty. Isela remained by her side, trading silks for simple dresses, jewels for the warmth of her mother's embrace. She learned again the rhythm of the needle, the patience of the thread, the dignity of work that came not from wealth but from love. At first, the villagers whispered. They had seen her ride in carriages, adorned in finery, and now they saw her bent over a sewing table beside her mother. But Isela did not flinch. For the first time, she felt no shame in who she was, nor in where she had come from. Marisol, though cautious, watched her daughter with quiet pride. She saw the change in her, the humility in her hands, the sincerity in her eyes. The wound of betrayal had not vanished, but it had begun to heal, stitched together by repentance and love. One evening, as the rain tapped gently against the roof, Isela sat beside her mother, her head resting on Marisol's shoulder. "I thought I needed riches to be whole," she whispered. "But I see now, I was already rich. I had you." Marisol's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. "And now, you have found yourself again." The candle flickered, casting a golden glow across the room. The basin still caught the rain, the roof still leaked, but the shack was no longer a place of sorrow. It was a home, bound not by walls or wealth, but by forgiveness. And in that fragile light, mother and daughter sat together, their hearts mended, their bond unbroken. The world outside might still measure worth in gold and marble, but within those humble walls, love was the only treasure that mattered. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing to our channel to support us in sharing more great stories.